Hello and welcome back. Brett here with clickmail.co. I'm excited about this video where we're going to be talking about our broad overview, which is the 3 steps to making godly decisions that produce fruit in your life and in your ministry or in your Christian business. And I've really been thinking about these for a long time. And the first thing that I want to address, and so the 3 steps are this, and then we'll kind of talk about addressing them individually, is God speaking miraculously. And I know this is going to be a little bit counter to a lot of the content that we have on the back end here of ClickMill. And I don't really get into the faith and the prayer and the hope and the faith and the faith, I said faith twice. But you already have that. You're already here. You're already a mature Christian. I don't have to teach you faith. But this does bridge in very strongly with decision making. And so I want to address it. So number one, is God telling you like miraculously, he's clearly speaking to your heart, or you're 100% sure he's telling you to do something. So that's going to be 1. 2 is it biblical? And 3, will it create better fruit? And so this is going to be the 3 broad steps. And I'm going to tell you how this works as we go through this video. So number 1, firstly, we're going to talk about a ton of logical, here's the best way within the created world to increase the likelihood that you're going to produce good fruit in your life, whatever that is. You know, the world is just a bunch of systems. And if you know that the green button creates fruit and the red button, blows something up, just push the green button and you're going to do better. That's, more or less in a very boiled down, way, that's how the world works. So when we get into the how to make the right logical decision, does it produce better fruit consistently, then do that. That's at the end. So what we want to say at the beginning is address the miraculous. We don't have to go through all of these complicated sort of human reasoning, which, I love. We don't have to go down all of that if God just tells you to do something. And that's the first thing that I want to address. Number 1 is God speaking miraculously. And I want to add to that, and telling you to do something illogical. If God tells me to look both ways before I cross the street, is it miraculous? Sure. And also, I would have just done that anyway because that's logical. So I don't really even have to question that. So, that's not really a big, like, ooh. If God is telling you to do something miraculously, it's God and it's illogical. And it's, all right, Brett, you've spent, decades building your experience and crafting your ability to do this thing called ClickMill. Now I want you to just shut down the whole thing and move to Antarctica at the South Pole. That's pretty illogical. That doesn't line up with any trajectory of my life that I've ever seen. There's no people there. So, but God, if that's 100% what you're saying, you say jump and I'll jump because that's my job. Then, as the servant, as the person who's trying to honor God and glorify him with my life, if that's where he tells us to go, then I guess that's where we're going. Now, within this, is God speaking miraculously? They're sort of their own tests. And number 1, I would say, is biblical. And that's just always the case. If you think God's talking to you and it's not in the Bible or it's counter to the Bible, especially morally, it's not God talking to you. And so that's what, just generally Christians as a whole would believe the Bible is God's inerrant truth. So if it doesn't align with the Bible, it's not God. So that's an easy test. I think secondly, a great example of if God is speaking miraculously and counterintuitively telling you to do something that's, crazy from our perspective would be, and I think his name's Gideon and the fleece. And God says, oh, you got your army and you're going to go fight this bigger army and you're going to lose. Well, watch what I can do. And anytime God's like wanting to watch what he can do, you want to watch because it's going to be great. And in that case, he's like, yeah, just send everybody home, keep these 300 guys. Then he selects them in a particular way. And he goes, now take those guys and go fight them. And it's like, what, Gideon here is like, okay, running the numbers. He's like, we're dead. Yeah. But here's the cool thing. He's like, more or less, I'm summarizing the story. You can read it yourself. He's saying, God, I'll do whatever you want. And at the same time, this makes no worldly sense. You want me to go up against that army with these 300 guys. Okay. Again, humble heart, forgive me for any unbelief, but I just want to know this is right. Please confirm this for me. This is confirmation. And so he says, make the fleece wet and the ground dry overnight with the dew, and God does it. So he puts out the sheep's fleece and the fleece is wet in the morning, but the ground is dry and it's a miracle. And he goes, okay, well, and says something to the degree of, please don't be angry with your servant or forgive me or something. and it's like reasonably so. He's looking at possibly dying. And so he's wanting some confirmation that this is actually what God wants him to do. I don't think this is a lack of faith. This is I want to make sure I'm doing what do you want to say? Not a reasonable thing because it's not reasonable, but I want, like, for example, if God told me to go to Antarctica, I would want to be sure because what is the downside? The downside is that I misunderstood because I'm a human and you know, I'm a sheep. I'm not the most brilliant creature God ever made. And I throw away all of the things I was supposed to stay because I heard wrong. Well, that's not a good outcome. So you want to make sure you're hearing correctly. And as long as you're willing to do the thing when God confirms it, I think he does confirm it and he shows that in Gideon. So he reconfirms the second time for Gideon, and then the fleece is dry and the ground is wet, whatever. And Gideon's like, all right, so be it. We're going in. And then God works miraculously in a way that would make no logical sense. You would just never do that. So, number one is God speaking miraculously and telling you to do something totally illogical. And if he is, go do it. Go do it. I do think that as believers, we have to be very discerning. We have to be careful because a lot of believers can get caught up into thinking, and this would be hyper spiritual. And so, if it's a hyper spiritual believer listening, we can get caught up in thinking everything is the voice of God. And again, like God speaking to us, not to say he doesn't speak more or less. He speaks to us in different times in different ways based on our needs and his will. And like, who even knows? And I have met a lot of believers who think that, God is speaking and telling them things that are clearly not biblical, that haven't been confirmed. And, there are obviously spiritual tests for these things. So be as sure as you can possibly be that God is speaking to you. And in my own life, it's like I've had one or two instances where it was like, oh, okay, no problem. And it was immediate. It was so overwhelming. It was like, I'm gone. I'm doing the thing. You don't have to tell me twice. And and sometimes you have that experience and do it. So that's decision making process. Number one is God telling me to do it, and it doesn't make any sense, but I know for sure it's him. Go do it, no questions asked. Number two, if there is a decision to be made, and now it's within your sphere of decision. God gave you a mind, so he gave you the ability to make decisions, and most decisions he's going to allow us to make. As an example, get married, and the Bible says marry someone equally yoked, marry a Christian. Okay, well, that leaves like 2 billion Christians, and 1 billion of them are, someone you could marry. How do you decide amongst a billion Christians? Well, the Bible doesn't really tell you. It just says marry a believer. Well, that leaves a lot of room for decision making. Like, should I marry a believer who's really honestly living their faith, or should I marry a believer who's got like a debilitating, cocaine addiction, or should I marry a believer that there's a gajillion ways you could cut that pie. Well, there's probably some decision making to be done. It's just any personality, or could I factor personality into that? Are there personalities that work best with me? Maybe details people just drive me crazy. I'm totally not speaking about me at all. No, but um, so we want to make decisions the best way that we can. And so number one, is it biblical? Whatever you're considering at any point in your life, is it biblical? If it's not biblical, cut it. Because if you're trying to live a Christian life and you're doing things that are not grounded in scripture, you're going to have a not godly life. And then you start ending up in some very dicey territory that you don't want to be in. So that's the most basic. If you're making a decision, it always has to be biblical. Okay. Number two, again, if it's your decision, will it produce better fruit than what I'm doing now? And we do not ask this question as believers. Again, probably because we're very focused on the faith and the hope and the love and like all this stuff that's not really measurable. It's not really grounded in reality in any tangible way, any measurable way. So what I'm interested in is, if I put a course on ClickMill, is it going to produce more? This is the vision of ClickMill. Is it going to produce more ministry leaders and Christian entrepreneurs that are going to get out there in the world and go get people and make a difference and support and disciple people? Like, is it actually going to create the result? So if it is, and you love this video, please leave me a comment and let me know, because I actually consider these things. The courses with the most engagement are going to get the most attention. The ones that have no engagement, they're going to get cut. So, is it going to produce better fruit? And this is how we create outsized and disproportionate harvests and fruit in our lives. It's not because there's anything special about us, it's just because we're only going to do things that are both biblical and get better fruit. It's like I can biblically marry anyone who says they're Christian as long as I believe them, and that's great. But if I want to have this really abundant, godly life, I'm probably going to want to marry someone who's Christian that themselves produces better fruit because I am going to be able to be in relationship with them, and then we're going to have a more abundant life because they're functional, they're making good choices, they're using their money wisely, raising the kids in a godly way, and you're going to have a better life. Well, same thing with your decisions. When you make decisions that only produce better fruit than the last, then you never have less fruit. All things staying the same, of course, things happen that are outside of your control, but all things staying the same, you always then have a more and more fruitful life. And that is so critical. And so if you can't say that it will produce better fruit and you don't know, then we're going to test it and we're going to test it for 90 days or whatever the time frame needs to be. And if it doesn't produce better fruit, we cut it and we go back to what was good before. And in marketing, for those of you in the ultimate plan, in the marketing, this is split testing. This is how you build multi-gajillion dollar businesses with paid advertising and marketing. And this is what we did in our conversion tracking course with our own website to get to the point where we started this course platform. Does it produce better fruit? And we just kept going to the next idea, and testing to see what produced fruit. And here we are in the back end of a course platform where we're creating as much value as we can. And so with that, that's our 3 steps. Now, I want to give one more little piece of information before we continue. Number 1, okay, is God telling you to do something miraculously that makes absolutely no sense? And if you can be sure and test, and how I'm not saying this, I'm not saying test God, but I'm saying test your own understanding, like Gideon did with the fleece, then do it. You don't have to think any further than that because if God tells you to do something, you do it. If you have the freedom to decide what you're doing and God's giving you a selection like in marriage, then what you want to do is number 1, make sure it's biblical. Number 2, make sure it's wise or make sure it produces better fruit than the thing that you're doing now. And that is how you have a disproportion. You optimize your whole life for biblical and fruit. And that is okay. God says, be fruitful and multiply. Well, okay. Well, great. So there we go. And so every time you make a decision, you're getting more and more fruit. Now, how do we make a decision that is going to be more fruitful than the last decision? And so this is going to kind of bring in the rest of this course. And you'll notice there's all kinds of things. There's like vision and 80/20 and just a whole bunch of different ways of thinking and assessing decisions. And each one of these is going to help you to assess a problem, assess a decision. And we know that means sacrifice and suffering, potential growth, allocation of resources. It's going to tell you if you make this decision, here are the most likely outcomes. And then you can decide to cut or not cut any particular part of your life or ministry. So you're intentionally deciding to suffer. And what these are called is mental models. And what a mental model is essentially a map. And it's a map of reality. And this isn't to say that they are exactly reality, but we all have maps of reality. We all have mental models, whether we like them or not. What I know in my mind is that I don't just run out in front of traffic. That would not be a good mental model because I'm going to get hit by a car and who knows what happens from there. That would not be a good, it's perfectly safe to run into the middle of the highway. That's not an accurate view of reality. So what a mental model is an assessment of reality. It is a test. It is a map that can help to guide you in where to go when navigating the complexities and difficulties in the world. And we are in the world, not of the world, but we're in it. We're shrewd as serpents. And so as a shrewd as a serpent person and as a person who's in the world and has to be able to function, I want to see it better than everyone else. And I want to be able to discern with precision the decisions that are going to make better fruit or worse fruit than where I am now. And so that is what these coming models are going to be. And these are going to be from various different fields of study. And this is super cool because people make decisions in chemistry and physics and any of these different various fields. And we're not going to get into any of those. We're just going to tell you how the decision is made. And then you'll be like, whoa, okay, I see it. But they come from all over the place and they're very productive when helping you to refine and optimize your life to, for example, like let's say as a ministry leader or business owner, you're working 80 hours a week and you're not getting the results you want. Well, most people think you have to work more to get the results you want. That's actually exactly backwards. You actually have to work less to get more. And it's in these, you'll see why in these decision making models, but they optimize your life in such a way that you can actually do less stuff and get more results. And as an example of this right now, we have here at ClickMill, we have clients internationally. We've got almost a half a dozen interns right now, team members in various countries. And somehow I'm just sitting here talking to you, not stressing about all of those things going on. We've got blogs going live and advertising accounts and clients and dashboards, and there's all this stuff going on. And I'm just getting to sit here and just hang out with you. And I'm not stressed. Why? Because I have used these different models, and God blesses this. I have used these different models to structure things and optimize things in a way where all of that complication doesn't touch me, at least during the time frames when I do this. And so I have time for it. And you can do that with all the things. You can do it with, you know, family time, and you have to do it with family time. And you need to write a sermon. You need to plan. You need some time to think about that thing you need to do with your business. You have to be able to get away, and you can't be overburdened. And so these help you to optimize your time in such a way that you will be able to get more results with less time and effort. And what happens is the better you get at this is the coolest thing. The better you get at this, where you really ultimately end up, if you just continue to push it and push it and push it, is you're the person who's kind of like sitting and you just solve problems in your mind. And then you say, oh, hey, Charlotte, can you please go and do this, this, and this? And then Charlotte executes. And then you go and you just think about the next problem. Now, that sounds easy because you don't have to do stuff. You're not hustling around and getting burnt out and all that. And you can get burnt out doing that. However, it's actually really difficult because the weight of those decisions, every decision is painful and every decision has to be scrutinized very heavily to make sure it's not only strategic, but it fits within certain parameters that give you a very high likelihood of getting good fruit. And that's what these sort of decision-making models that we're going to go through help you do. It will help you to save your resources, your personal resources, so you can do more. And with the decisions you do make, you will reap a bigger reward. So hopefully that's clear. And in the next video, we're going to get into the very first decision-making model we've discussed. Now, of course, this is going to be separate then, or coming after, is God talking to you miraculously? That is going to be the baseline for everything. And if he is, do that. And then number two, is it biblical? If it's not biblical, it's not an option. Just cut it out. Okay, so the next one is, once you filter through those 2 points, here's the next one. And so I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you for hanging with me through this explanation. I'll see you there.